Hi, I'm Lara Wallace, and welcome back to Bass Capital Radio. Today, I am here with Sam Carr from the Bartram Trail Society of Florida. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you.
I've had a number of interviews, and you are a hot topic. It seems like everybody knows Sam Carr,
Yeah.
the man about town.
Yes.
And I am excited about the opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. And my favorite question I always start off with, because this is a podcast about Putnam County,
Right.
is how did you end up in Putnam County?
Well, it all related back to fishing.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's a good answer.
I was born and raised actually in Alabama, and my father was allergic to pecan blossoms. And if you know anything about Alabama, there's a lot of pecan trees there. So
Yeah.
2 weeks out of every year, he had to leave town.
Wow.
And so he started coming down here to the St. Johns River and fishing,
Mm-hmm.
and he would bring me with him, and that was in the 50s.
Uh-huh.
And so when my first trip on the St. Johns River was in 1955, and so that's so he found a place here on the river in San Mateo that he thought he wanted to build his dream home. That's what we did. So that's how I wound up here. So I actually started going to school here in 63, I guess it was. We started going to school here at Palatka Middle School.
Okay.
And graduated from Palatka South High School in the infamous or notorious, I don't know which it is, class of 1970.
Oh, I bet there's some good stories there.
You ought to do a podcast on the class of 70.
I have heard some stories.
Includes Taylor and David Buckles.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, then.
And it goes on from there, and Tim Smith and Karen Hughes, and this goes on.
You were all in the same class?
Sure were.
Oh,
We
wow.
absolutely were. Yeah.
I know my dad, Larry Farmer, was at some point was part of Taylor's tribe, and that. And I've always heard there were some good stories about that class. I did not know all of you were in the same class together.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a solid podcast right there.
If we can get Tom Deputy here with his pictures, it really would be fun.
Oh my gosh, Tom's pictures. I've always said I wanted him to set up a walkthrough, whether we do it at the storefronts or we do like a visual walkthrough of all the photographs he has of this community. That would be amazing. But I think the first thing that came to mind, honestly, when you said your dad had a pecan allergy, that's a great excuse to go fishing.
Absolutely.
Oh, my pecan allergy is messing up. I got to go fishing.
So he would check me out of school for 2 weeks every year, and
what a great
we'd
benefit
come down
that
here
worked
and
out for
we'd
you.
fish, and this place called Kennard's Fish Camp down near where we live, and we would have that cabin every year for 2 weeks, and we'd go to Silver Springs and go to St. Augustine and Marineland, and those were.
Oh yeah, yeah. My dad took me a lot toward the inlet near Marineland to go fishing. So, and we have a fabulous resource here. I mean, obviously the Bass Elite comes here all the time. So your dad was. He knew well before where the good fishing was, right?
Exactly.
So you went to school here. You graduated from Palatka South, and what did you decide to do after high school?
Well, I was my whole family. Went to Auburn University up near home, and in fact, my uncle was the dean of physics there, so we had a close tie there. And so everybody wanted me to go to Auburn for college, but there's no surf in Auburn. So I went to Melbourne to Florida Institute of Technology, and so that's where I got a degree in computer science from there. Computers were a lot different then.
Yeah, I was going to say
that's right.
That's a different field
and then graduated during the computer depression of 1970. So there were virtually no jobs in the computer industry at that point in time. So I wound up getting a job with Ford Motor Company and spent 32 years with them.
That's a solid place to be at that time, right?
Yeah, it was. It was a great career. It really was. And so I inherited the house that we built on the St. Johns River, and that's where I'll now.
Oh, so you roots to now. You've been in the same place short that time span when you were not in Florida. That's amazing. And you've raised your family there?
Yes.
Yeah. So do you have any of your children that are still in Putnam County? Or
my son Sammy still lives with us, and he's here in town. And my daughter Kelly She's actually the, let's see, not the dean. She's the head of the Department of Communication at the University of West Florida in Pensacola.
And so
So we're
she
real
also
proud of
stayed
her.
out of the Auburn mold then.
Yeah, she did. She did go to FSU, which was a good thing, and got 2 degrees from there, and then got her doctorate up in the University of Maryland.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, and so now she's a head person over at University of West Florida, which
Very
that's where she
nice.
likes. Yeah,
Yeah, Pensacola is a lovely
it
area.
is. It's nice.
They have their I think it's Halifax, their main drag. I visited there a few years ago for a work trip, and it really reminded me of home and encouraged me at the potential that we have in Putnam
Yeah,
County.
we do.
I mean, because they really are active morning, noon, and night.
Mhm.
People are down there for lunch. It was a Tuesday or Wednesday evening, and there were people all out on the street.
Yeah, they do it right there. They really do. That whole old downtown area and everything like that is exactly what. Well, it's really what Palatka is,
Hmm.
and all it. But it's a matter of us um, treasuring that and
Agreed.
developing along those lines and everything, which is what I'm glad. What Charlie's his vision of this thing, and same thing with Matt Sloan or Breck Sloan's ideas and everything. Those are the right ideas,
Hmm.
and also. Um, yeah,
It's valuable to hear
very.
you say that because to me, you're a Putnam County resident,
Mhm.
but pretty much born and raised.
Yeah,
You've got a lot of memories, and coming in at middle school, I think that you've done your time. You
yeah,
count. But I really, um, having grown up here my whole life, I really didn't see the value because I think I grew up kind of in that era where we were just starting to branch into like the technological. Like I had my first cell phone when I was in high school. I'm really dating
mhm,
myself right now, but I had my first cell phone when I was in high school. But I really started to make that momentum into computers being more used.
mhm.
And I don't think that we spend as much time in the community as
Right.
my parents' generation. So hearing
Mhm.
that generation and beyond share that they feel like we're making that right turn, it really is encouraging because you guys know you were in
Yeah,
it all
yeah.
all day. So, um, tell me how you went from Ford Motors to Bartram Trail aficionado.
That's right. Well, it was I got into fishing obviously with my dad and everything, and so and then I got into kayak fishing. My friend Donnie Adams makes kayaks down at the on Third Street here, and he gave me one
He
of his
makes
kayaks.
kayaks.
Well, he did, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, yes, he did,
Yeah.
and so I started fly fishing out of my kayak, and then my friend Dean Campbell um, and Donnie had started an excursion on the St. John's to paddle the entire St. John's River, all 310
Wow.
miles of it. But we do it on weekends, and so I was still employed with Ford Motor Company at the time, and so I said, "Sure, I'll go."
Hmm.
And so we started going on these weekend trips down the St. John's River and everything. So as we started as close to the headwaters as we could and started coming downstream. And as we came into Lake George and past Willaca and on into Palatka, where I live,
Hmm.
Dean kept telling me these stories. Well, Bartram did this over there. Bartram did this, and who is that?
Right.
I really had no earthly idea. And about that time, my sister in Pensacola, or in Daphne, Florida, she had gone to the Bartram Trail Conference out there,
Mhm.
and she had sent me some Bartram information. I'm going, wow, that's pretty neat. So I probably ought to get the book and read about it. And then I started reading along with Bartram's travels. I started reading. Um, oh gosh, River of Lakes by, and I forget his name. I always names are really bad with me.
And then
But
you are in the
yeah,
right
yeah,
format here because I'm
yeah,
forever
yeah,
forgetting something. But we'll
yeah,
for any books or anything that you mentioned, we'll be sure to drop a link
yeah,
below if
yeah,
somebody's
yeah.
interested in the book.
So the book River of Lakes is kind of a chronology of the author paddling, doing the same thing we were doing,
Okay.
paddling the whole St. John's River, but he's doing it from a writer's point of view and bringing in the history and bringing in the natural landscapes and all of this, that, and the other. It was really, really interesting to read the book as you're doing the paddle.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And so he had many Bartram references in there too. So I started reading about it.
This
And
guy's
when
haunting you.
Right,
Bartram's
right.
everywhere.
So then I opened up the book of travels, and there, sure enough, there on page about 95 or so, it starts talking about drifting past Palatka and seeing the Indians and the kids playing in the water, shooting frogs with bows and arrows, and it's right here. And so it gets real personal,
Yeah.
and so he wrote in his book that, the people appeared happy in their situation here on the, I mean, he was talking about this
Yeah.
to where we're sitting right now.
Oh my goodness.
And so it really started to mean something to me. And so at that time I had joined the Friends of Dunn's Creek State Park CSO, and they had asked me to represent them at the Putnam County Waterways Committee, headed by Nancy Harris. And so I'm sitting there, in the meeting, and somebody from the city came in and said to the Waterways Committee, we're talking about redoing the riverfront in Palatka. Did anything famous happen there? I said, this guy named William Bartram was here.
Right.
And he wrote a book, and it's America's first masterpiece, literary masterpiece.
Right.
And we're all in it. And they're going, really? Yeah. Stokes Landing was where he stayed, and all of his trips in Florida started and ended there. So Nancy says, well, that's great, Sam. So you're the chairman of the Bartram Trail and Putnam County Committee. And I'm saying, what does that mean?
Right.
We didn't know.
Right.
We really didn't know. So that's how it started with that paddling trip, and with Nancy Harris having enough vision to think that this was something valuable for Putnam County.
And she was right.
And she was right. And so it went downstream from there. It was in 2013, and in 2016 we were designated as a National Recreation Trail as a result of that committee's works and everything. And then the Bartram Trail Society of Florida actually started in 1978 with Ken Mahaffey and them starting it up as part of the Florida Federation Garden Clubs.
Yeah.
And so they had tried to get it started back then, but and it gone defunct. And so with the city and the county supporting us, then we went to the Florida Humanities Council and got a major grant from them of $30,000, and it was $15,000 in cash and $15,000 in kind things. And so, somebody else applied for this thing. Jonathan Griffith was part of it, and Christy Sanford was another part of it. She's no longer here in Palatka, and then all of a sudden in January they announced that, guess what? You've got the grant. And we're going, oh no, now we have to do something.
Exactly.
And that really got it started. It was really amazing how quickly it picked up and went from there. And again, as Nancy and I always talk about, she always says, Sam, it was meant to be. Well, evidently it was. And I always said, well, we've been paddling downstream the whole way. It's really not been a struggle from the standpoint of it just seemed like the right thing to do at the time.
Yeah.
So the fun part of it was actually going out with Dean and Ken and the rest of us and actually finding these locations that Bartram paddled in.
I bet
Putnam
that's
County.
so amazing.
And we found 31 of them, and it was really amazing. You read the book. Okay, well, where was this?
Right.
Well, let's go see. And we go off and find the location, and it really was exciting. It was. And subsequent to that, then we made a phone call. Bartram Trail, what is that? We didn't know.
Yeah, two separate things.
We didn't know. So I found their website and sent an email, email. And this person by the name of Catherine Braun answered my email. And my email was just basically 2 lines. Do y'all have a pattern for Bartram? What is the Bartram Trail? And what, da, da, da. And so she sends back a 2-page email.
You have to get for 2 lines.
You have to be very specific. What do you want to know? Da, 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 da. It's just going on and on. I'm going, this is not a normal person. And so as it turns out, Catherine Braun was one of the premier historic instructors for Auburn University. And not only that, she knew my cousin Carolyn Ann, which
Wow.
just, was really amazing.
Sam, you were meant to be here.
It
in that
was, it
exact
really was.
position.
And so, in our first conversation, I said, well, you know what, my cousin Carolyn Ann. Well, yes, I know Carolyn Ann. I see her every day. And I'm going, no kidding,
Wow.
unbelievable. So that's kind of how the relationship started with the Bartram Trail Committee and the Bartram Trail Conference.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Bartram Trail Conference kind of, we talked through what should we be doing. They're more of a scholastic type group, but they had developed Bartram trails across the southeast.
Okay.
And so we had some kind of information to go by and all. And so then about the same time, I was declared a governor's appointment to the Florida Greenways and Trails Council.
What a title.
Which I had no earthly idea what that was, but I showed up anyway. And as it turns out, that's the governing group of trails in the state of Florida. I mean, that's what it is. And the council are the civilian members, not the state employees, that kind of guide the direction of the council. And so I was getting exposure to statewide trail organizations and trail development and all of that kind of stuff. And so that's kind of all came together to develop the Bartram Trail here in Putnam County.
That's incredible.
It was incredible.
And is this because you were doing it on the weekend because you were still working?
The paddling trip, right?
Yeah. So obviously this seems like a full-time job to me.
Well, it was because I retired in 2017, so just in time to get this thing
right back into a full-time job.
Right. It was fun. It was good. It was. I'm sorry, 2007 is when I retired. So yeah, I was. I was ripe for the picking.
You can just tilt that up. Perfect. So at what point did the education piece to students come in? Because I thought that was incredible. Yeah. And what you provide to them for them to, like, just for a frame of reference, if you have not been to the Frolic, they bring down the tent, a nice shady place, and you guys have reenactors, William Bartram himself down there, and in period piece clothing, giving children an education of what they would have seen. And it really is. I mean, I've walked down there a few times, and I am very blessed to have a front row seat to all that you do there. But these students are seeing a period that you could never imagine. Like for me, I made mud pies. Like I went out and picked stuff, and I didn't have the same technology exposure, and seeing a picture on the computer, on your phone, or watching a video is nice. Like you can get a lot more education from all over, but being in it is a much different experience. So tell me about that.
Okay. So the evolution of the trail kind of went like this. So once we got our grant from the Humanities Council, and the city and the county started supporting us in this thing. The county's part of it was their in-kind services were to provide us with a website and to help us with the signage and so forth. The city was kind of the organizational body, and so they paid all the bills and all this, that, and the other that we were incurring and all that. And so it was a real cooperative effort, which we need more of here in Putnam County.
Well
between
said.
The city and Putnam County. But this is their project. This is the city and the county's project, really. And so they developed it.
Thing that they worked together.
It really was. It was great to work with them, and each one had their own part, and it worked out well. So as they were doing that, part of the Humanities Council grant provided that we have what they called a symposium. Okay. We had to vet the accuracy of the information that we were sharing
How do you
to
do
make
that?
the trail.
Yeah.
Well, the way you do it is you get scholars who have written about that subject to
Okay.
come and talk about it and to verify, yes, he was here. The Long Warrior was here, was a real person, and here's exactly, and here's how it's been portrayed across the nation, and here's the education part of it, and all this, that, and the other. And so, sure enough, we had that in the summer of 2013. We had our first symposium at the Larimer. And we thought they have 75 seats in the Larimer, so we thought if we can get half of those full, it'd be great, you know.
Right.
And we've checked our box with the Humanities Council. Well, 125 people showed up for this, and out of
Not
the
enough seats for sure there.
right, and out of the 125 people that showed up for it,
Wow.
about 100 were not from Putnam County. So
Wow.
we were more famous outside of Putnam County than we were. Just like you were saying, nobody knows
Yeah.
the history and the heritage that we have. And so we were blown away. And so we had the scholars that we had here were literally the Bartram scholars. I mean, the people that have written the books and editions on Bartram and the trail books and all of that. They all came here and were part of that symposium. And so and most of them were members of the Bartram Trail Conference as well, which does make sense. But and so we learned so much. I remember Dean Campbell and I sitting there at the end of the symposium, and we're just laughing at each other, going, "Who would have thought?"
Yeah.
You know,
I thought you were just taking me fly fishing.
I mean, who would have thought that it is true and everything?
Right.
And so one of the first persons that we connected with was Dr. Charlotte Porter. She's a retired professor of history and was also the curator at the Natural History Museum in Gainesville for the Natural History Museum
Yeah, I
there.
love that place.
And so we knew that Charlotte was a Bartram scholar, obviously, because you read her book, and she was also had co-authored the book with Catherine Braun. So
Okay.
we had those connections, and so we had the symposium here. But Charlotte had created for Alachua County Teacher's Guide to William Bartram in Florida,
Okay.
and she actually brought that to one of the very first meetings that we had with Nancy at the City Commission. And she throws it out on the table and she says, "Here it is." And so we're all sitting there going, "Golly, it's really true. It's, it actually happened here." And so with that, the conference knew what we were doing. And a year later, in 2015, they decided to hold the Bartram Trail Conference here in Palatka because of the development of the Bartram Trail here.
Right.
And so when we did that, then we knew there was an educational component, but we didn't know how to apply it. Then we knew also that this was something that people wanted to see and do. So our very first frolic was actually at the River Center for the conference.
Right.
And so beyond that, then we wound up getting designated as a National Recreation Trail in 2016. And so to celebrate the 2016 designation of the National Recreation Trail, we decided to have a fall festival in Palatka because there wasn't one.
Right.
So we figured that'd be a good time. And so we decided to do that in the fall of 2016. And we would carry over the frolic at the River Center. That was an idea. And then what else do we do? So we made it a recreational type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the River Center got wind of it. The River Keeper. Lisa Reineman introduces us to her educational director, Emily Floor.
Mm-hmm.
And Emily Floor comes down here and says, "Hey, what if we, up in Jacksonville, we take kids out on a ride on the river to teach them about the river and everything like that? What if we did that using Bartram as the theme?" I said, "Kind of makes sense to me."
Right. Absolutely.
So they contacted the Putnam County School District, and then the school district says, "That sounds good to me, but we want your living history to be part of it." So since we already had the living history actors at our frolic,
Mm-hmm.
then it made sense that they would become part of the educational program. And so that's how the education program started. And so the River Keeper had about 10 stations that they wanted the kids to see, along with Florida Water Management, with the St. Johns River Water Management District, FWC, Walaka Fish Hatchery, and all of these elements they wanted to educate the kids along those lines, keep Putnam beautiful. All of that was part of the original education program for the kids, but it was all with Billy Bartram as the theme, and talked about the nature of the St. Johns River, and so that's kind of how we got started. And so as of this year, according to Rick Cerncy, we've educated 5,000 second graders on William Bartram on the St. Johns River and taken them for their first boat ride on the St. Johns.
I was going to say that it is so special for some of these kids that it's great that they get to come down and they experience like the reenactment, and it's also remarkable that there are so many components. If you really think about Putnam County, like you listed a ton of components to some type of aquatic or trail like resource. That makes us very special, and to be 45 minutes away from a beach and still have all the ravines. Fun fact, I got this from Miss Nicole Grace, and I'll share a thought about fun facts in a minute. But my understanding is that the ravines is like a destination spot for people who are teaching their kids to climb mountain climb. Yeah. Well, if two people said it's got to be true. But I love that. And then to think about, now you've got the kids down here. They're on the banks where that Bartram saw other families enjoy. I would be happy living on the riverfront. That's a beautiful spot. Like, and just thinking about how it comes up, and you got the obviously it looked a bit different than it was before, but you've got that dry dock, and then it just slants up and then out into the town.
It's been here for a long time.
Yeah, a very long time. Yeah. But then to take them out onto that river where many of them have never been exposed. And I bet statistically, I would like to know the statistics to this. If there was like a pre-survey, how many of these kids have been on a boat, I think probably 50%.
It's pretty close to that. It really is. And it's amazing what we found out, especially the kids from Crescent City. It's amazing when they get here. They're some of the most well-behaved classes that we have. Also.
Crescent City.
Yes,
we need to take some tips down there to figure out what they're doing.
But some of them have rarely even been across this bridge. They don't know what that piece of water is. And so to introduce them to the St. Johns River, that's what the Riverkeeper does and everything. So all of the stations in this have a specific purpose. And not only that, but because of the way that the Riverkeeper and the school district designed it, there are learning standards, second grade learning standards at every one of those stations. So Joe Wiggins has 3 things to teach those second graders. And he does it, and he does it in the first person. Same thing with the Long Warrior. He has 3 things that he needs to teach those kids, as part of their education process. And then Willie Bartram does the same thing. He's got 3 things that he needs to have the kids remember once they leave there. And then same thing with water management. So those are the learning standards that are applied. So it really is it's really an amazing thing that has been created. And it also became the fun part of what we do. It really is. And so we use the education program as kind of an introduction into the Saturday event, which is the public event.
Right. And I think the public, a lot of parents know that their kids go to this event. So I think that they disregard the fact that they can also go to this event. It really is a special. All right, so you might have noticed we took a brief breather there because Sam, you were like excited to share this quote. I love that you were. Hang on a second. Yeah. So please share the quote with me. Why it's so important. I'd love to hear that.
Okay, so as we were talking about why do the Bartram Trail here in Palatka, and you think about our heritage and so forth. I mean, it goes back to then. So in 1774, 250 years ago, right now.
That's a wild thought to think about.
William Bartram paddled past here in his little what he called a bark. It was half canoe, half sailboat type thing. And as he came through here, he wrote about it. And this is what he says. As I continued coasting the Indian shore of this bay on a doubling a promontory, which means a you know, the point out here,
Mm-hmm.
I suddenly saw before me an Indian settlement or village. It was a fine situation. The bank rising gradually from the water. There were 8 or 10 habitations in a row or street fronting the water, about 50 yards distance from it. Some of the youth were naked up to their hips in the water, fishing with rods and lines, while others, younger, were diverting themselves and shooting frogs with bows and arrows. Sounds like us.
Yeah.
On my near approach, the little children took to their heels and ran to some women who were hoeing corn, but the stouter youth stood their ground and smiling called to me. As I passed along, I observed some elderly people reclining on skins spread on the ground under the cool shade of the spreading oaks and palms that were arranged in front of their houses. They arose and eyed me as I passed, but perceiving that I kept on without stopping, they resumed their former position. They were civil and appeared happy in their situation.
Wow.
And that's William Bartram's description of Palatka in 1774.
That's
So,
amazing.
and so that's our heritage,
Right.
literally, and that's how we were introduced to America in that particular thing. Bartram's travels were again America's first literary masterpiece, and there we are.
That really is what, like, really, if you think about it. I'm just going to take a pause with the audience. So if you can really just to embody that moment, right? And both of my parents have, roots here, and shame on me for not knowing it better. And my mom and I have a date this weekend that we're supposed to sit down and talk about, tell me everything that you know, because I've really gotten into like understanding that. But, we're talking not just like old timey Palatka where people were already out here
Right.
with the horses and the pavers and
Right.
things like that, even back to like horse and buggy things, but like the beginning of really history. And these people, were here, and he's floating down the dock, and maybe who knows how many travelers they've seen. Obviously, they weren't terrified. Maybe somebody else has come before them, but he is embarking on this journey to write this out. And it comes, and I've tried to put myself in that position, watching that from a bird's eye view as he's coming down the banks, and people are out there. And I could think about how many times I see people out in the riverfront with their little blankets having a picnic, and you have some elders out there and kids playing around. And like, that's just so amazing to think that his perspective is, this is a fun place, that really is.
So that's why the Putt Playground is there, because that's the actual site.
Dog, I like that.
Exactly right. And so
That's
the
awesome.
kiosk there kind of explains it all,
Yeah.
because he describes chickies and all of that in the location and everything. So, but that really, when they asked the question, did anything famous happen here? That particular quote is what I used to say, yeah, it was.
Nailed it. No,
Yeah.
you got me with it.
It's really, really amazing. And then the story of the watermelon feast is another story later on that year. But it's and that the watermelon feast is more frolic like than this.
Fun fact, non-fact, and we'll talk about facts, non-facts. So first fact, non-fact, in my journey to put out interesting things about Putnam County, because Palatka is obviously, the benchmark here for Putnam County, the center of that. And then, but there's a great history at Crescent City, Willaca, Interlochen. We're steeped with history of all kinds. But I was Googling, interesting facts to share with people, and they talked about Benjamin A. Putnam, and they talked about Bartram, and then they said Palatka, Florida, or Putnam County, Florida, is known for their watermelon festival, historic, right?
Okay.
Their historic watermelon festival every year that takes place in, I think they said, Interlochen. I was like, what?
Yeah.
So I start like continuing to Google, and I'm asking everybody. Marsha Lane, who I know is brilliant with history. I said, Miss Marsha, did we ever have a watermelon festival? And so in research, I can understand why it's so important to share or to get that validated. And another thing, so in the interview with Ken and Janice, we are in a building that is right here in at the riverfront, where all of this that we're talking about is taking place. And somewhere along the way, I picked up the fact that this building had a fire. Now, that does not mean that it isn't true, but I always associated it with the fires in the 1800s that burned
All right.
all of that. But this came after that, and Miss Janice was very nice to help steer me in the right direction. And so I'd like to do a history on this building, but
Yeah.
it is important to fact check before you go out and spit things out. And I think it's really neat that they ask you to bring that kind of, you got to know what you got to know, and you got to do your due diligence with somebody who's done their due diligence. So, anyway, the watermelon got me off on that tangent, but
So there was a watermelon feast in 1774, right where we were staying.
well, maybe Google's talking about the watermelon feast of 1774, but feast festival, they're close enough. But anyway, I think that's great to understand how all of this came together. I think one of my favorite stories that involved you was Ken and Janice had went on a trip to London, I believe.
Yeah.
And you gave them a mission.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
That was really interesting because as we're talking to the scholars about what's here and so forth, Charlotte Porter was part of our committee actually, and she would come over on a monthly basis and talk to us about the Bartram heritage and so forth because she knew it,
right,
and all, and she had obviously written books about it. And so while we're there talking about it, and Ken and Janice announced that they were going on their trip to. Ken had retired as the tax collector, and so they were going on an extended trip to Europe. And so Charlotte's in the meeting when they were telling us about that. And so Charlotte says, well, you ought to go by the Natural History Museum in London because that's where all of the Bartram stuff is. And so we're saying, well, what kind of stuff? And she says, well, as he made his drawings and his reports, he sent them to Dr. Fothergill. And Dr. Fothergill bequeathed all of that to the Natural History Museum at London. And so that's where it is. And there's a person there by the name of Judith McGee, who is the curator of the Bartram collection at the Natural History Museum. And they have the original drawings that were made here in Florida and all. And so we're going, man, this is great. This is great. So Ken and Janice are going, yeah, we can go see them. And so Nancy Harris provides Ken and Janice a letter from the County Commission of Putnam County declaring that Ken and Janice are our duly designated representatives of Putnam County we would like our Bartram stuff back. so
please and thank you.
That's right. So just send it back. And so Ken and Janice got to spend 2 days with Judith McGee. Now Judith McGee has written the quintessential Bartram book from a British perspective. And all of the drawings and all of that are curated in that book, and all the letters that Bartram wrote to Fothergill and to his benefactors back in England and all that kind of stuff she has in her book. And so, she knows her stuff. And so Ken and Janice went over and met with her and spent a couple of days with her and all. And so when they came back, and we're in the process of building the Bartram Trail, when we're coming back, we knew that the conference was coming, and also the idea came up. Hey, we want to invite Andrea, or we want to invite Judith over here. And so they contacted her, and she accepted that she was coming to the Bartram Trail Conference here in Palatka.
Wow!
And so then she let us know that she couldn't come, but then we had a list of drawings that we wanted pictures of, especially drawings that he would have drawn on the St. Johns River. That's
right.
That's what.
Sure.
So
we don't want them all, but if we could, sure. But so take some.
This all happened within like 24, 48 hours. She sends an email back saying, which ones do you want? You know, we're sitting there going, duh, we don't know. So we literally got her book out. Ken and Janice and I sat down and literally got her book out and went page by page saying, well, okay, there's a fish. We want that one. There's a fish. That's a bird on the St. John's. We want that one. And we chose 21 of his drawings that we wanted copies of. Well, she didn't send us copies of them. She made full-size scans of Bartram's artwork, and that's what she provided to us at no cost or anything. And you can't get it anymore. So we have, as part of the Bartram Trail of Florida, the full-size scans of 21.
Where could we see those now if we wanted to?
Well, some of them are actually printed over at the River Center.
Okay.
So there's several of them
Yes.
there, but and the rest of them are actually Palaca Daily News is keeping them for us. So
How?
so they need to be displayed and everything. So,
I'd love that.
so the
yeah.
city actually went and bought the right kind of paper and everything, and we printed them. We didn't print them in the right sizes, but having that is amazing. And so when the conference came, we had these paintings, and the conference just went nuts.
Oh,
How
I
did you
bet.
get these?
Right.
Do you have, and all that. And
We
so,
sent officials over to London.
we wanted our stuff back, and they couldn't believe that it actually happened. So Judith winds up with a personal issue, so she couldn't make it, and so to the conference.
What a
And so we
shame.
wound up having another very famous Bartram person, and that is Andrea Wolfe, who wrote the book The Brother Gardeners,
Mhm.
about the presidents of the United States and Bartram and all of that, and how gardening was very much a part of our Revolutionary War and all this.
You know what we should do, Sam? You've talked about a lot of books. Is there a place that I can, and I probably should already know this, does the Bartram website have a list of all these books?
Bartram Trail Conference.
Bartram Trail Conference.
Yeah, go to library. They're
Okay.
all there.
All right, I'm gonna be sure to put links in there in this video for that. So I have been meandering into Needful Things, and I've been in there under its different iterations, but as a bookstore. But yeah, I bought the signed copy of the Barton Booger, and I really am interested in this. And I love the outdoors, and I like that the garden club is kind of how this got started.
Yeah.
Because I also have found a love of gardening and have learned not to kill everything. And I would really like to read some of these pieces to get that full effect, because it is like, I mean, this is home for me and this is home for my children. And I'm not going anywhere. You know, when I married my husband, he was like, I don't want to live in Palaca or Putnam County. I was like, why? There's nothing going on here. So you just don't know. Like, that's what it is. And I had, honestly, I just scratched the surface of the beauty of this community. And he's like, oh, whatever. And now we bought our home in East Palaca, and he is another Putnam County rallier that says, you just don't know, to turning people. But in Needful Things, they have a lot of Florida and local books. So I'm going to probably meander in there after we get done here. Tell me some of the remarkable things that stood out to you as well before you were in the Bartram Trail that really were awe-inspiring, reading Bartram's works in Palaca.
Well, it's just a plain fact that it actually happened here, and it really, when he had to paddle past my house 6 times. I mean, there's no other way he could have come.
There you go.
So forth. So that's significant. I know where Murphy's Island is. I know where Dunn's Creek is. I know where Bear Island and Dunn's Creek is. I know where the lower store is located, and I know Mr. Wilson down there that showed me where they excavated. And then when we started finding the springs one after the other down in Willac, it's just all. I mean, that was just the amazing part of this thing, was that it was really here. And Putnam County is really fortunate in that our Bartram sites are much like he saw them when he was here in 1774.
Okay, yeah.
You can't say that in Jacksonville because all of those old plantations are now gone, and they're developed, and they're
that gave me chills just thinking about the fact that we have that preserved.
Right, we
So
do.
unique.
And Nassau County has a lot of its preserved, but there's not nearly as many locations and everything. But most of what is in Nassau County is also public property, and so that's beneficial. But here in Putnam County, we're just blessed with so many Bartram sites, and you know his and it's part of the whole story of Florida actually, because the uh, Bartram was a poet. He, you know, literature was incredible. The science that he did was incredible. In fact, his first draft of travels, when it got over to England, they wrote back and said, "Hey, you don't have enough science in here. You know, you need to go back and put the real names of these plants and so forth in there." And so his father, John Bartram, taught William how to do that, and actually became an associate of Linnaeus, which wrote the book on naming plants. And so it just really remarkable how all the links are.
Yeah.
And then when we started getting these the Bartram people and the historians actually showing up here for the frolics and this and the other and the conference, um, you know, it really showed you what a rich heritage we have here. We
Yeah.
really do.
Yeah.
We really do. I remember Joel Fry, who is the curator. He passed last year, but Joel Fry is the quintessential Bartram authority
Hmm.
because he is the curator of the John Bartram Gardens up in Philadelphia, where John and William were born, raised, and died at the same place. And so when Joel was sitting on top of the River Center with us one time, and so during the conference, and I was talking to him. I said, Joel, shouldn't we have a Bartram conference at Bartram Gardens? You know, he says, Sam, you got more to do down here than we've got to do up there.
Wow.
And he came and he spent a whole week here in town,
Oh,
just going to all the Bartram sites and Salt Springs and even down further
we
to.
need a gardens here like
Yeah.
that. I mean, I know we have Ravine Garden,
Well,
but like a,
yeah, we've got the River Center, which is the headquarters of the Bartram
yeah,
National Recreation Trail,
yeah.
and so
Well, I guess I'm thinking gardens, like in
yeah,
all of the
yes.
plants that he discovered along the way, you know.
Ken and Janice are trying to start a Bartram Garden there behind the Presbyterian Church. So that's cool. But that's exactly, if you read the goals of the Bartram Trail Conference, that's what they're trying to do: connect all of these locations that using Bartram as the inspiration to recognize the natural history of all of Southeast Florida, all of
Wow.
Southeast United States, actually.
Yeah,
So,
it's incredible.
yeah, it really is. It's really amazing thing. And you know, there again, getting back to how it developed here in Putnam County. Again, for Dean and I, it was a trails project,
Right, right,
but for everybody else, it was historic and it was literature and all. You know, we've had a book written about the Bartram Trail in
right.
Putnam County. It's called, Travels on the St. Johns, and that book was written because of what we've done here, and it's literally a guidebook for John and William Bartram on the whole St. Johns River, and it was written. Well, Dean did the map work in it. Dick France did the second half of the book where he describes all the plants up and down the river that Bartram discovered and
Hmm.
everything. And then Thomas Halleck, our good friend, edits Bartram's travels and John Bartram's journals to describe their day by day travels up and down the St. Johns River. Really
That's so
amazing.
cool.
And so it it's really been fun to do. It really has been fun to do, and I don't just kind of you need to know that I don't do much in Putnam County anymore because we've got Nassau County who is busy building their Bartram Trail. We've got now Alachua County who just can't wait to get their teeth wet and getting that thing done. And then Clay County is building their Bartram Trail. St. Johns County is
So we've inspired.
yes, we have. We have. And so you've got, just like I said, there's 7 counties that are currently building what we've got here what we've had here in Putnam County since 2015.
See, all of those who said Putnam County was behind the times, some areas we are leading the forefront here. And we have Sam Carr to help guide and help us along the way. You know, and if you really think about it, after speaking with the Blue A and Trails, Craig, we have our own uniqueness in that too, because you can, and they're working on some of the gaps in this trail, but much like Billy Bartram, we can ride down these bike paths and experience a view, a perspective that many others don't. And the fact that I also learned that you could connect from California all the way to Florida. You know, it just really, while it seems like 250 years, I mean, it is a long time, but the fact that we still have the ability to adventure in that aspect in so many ways in Putnam County. And I really, like, I want to go on an adventure now and ride the St. John's. I know Andrea Conover has shared with me that she did that, and I thought that was quite remarkable. My husband and I have recently found an interest in kayak, so maybe I have a even more of a reason to do that now. But the fact that you guys got together and just took such an interest in that and ran with it. I mean, really, to just put it frankly, like, that wasn't what your intentions were when you went to school. You did something completely different. As we as community members, often I talk about volunteerism and how you could be a part of a community, right? This was not your hometown, but you came in, you saw the value because your dad instilled in you fishing, which is something very important to our community. And as we are living and working and playing in this community, whether you were born and raised here, whether you've lived here a short period of time, whatever it is, you could come in and you could be a part of something despite your background.
Yeah, there's so much to do. There really is. We've got, we've got issues on the St. Johns River that people can get involved with, and then there really is so much to do. There literally is. It's good, and I'm glad you mentioned about the young people, because that's what we would like to see. We're all getting old, and I don't do as much kayaking as I used to, but people do, and when we do the frolic again, we try to emphasize the recreational aspects of it. So we always have 3 paddles led by Dean and all during the frolic to the different spots, Bartram sites here, and then those are really interesting things, but it's also fun to do.
Yeah.
To see it as historic and so forth, and it adds meaning to it. If for example, launching at the the Gator place down in Satsuma,
trying to think of where are we talking about a restaurant?
The bar, yeah, the bar.
Porky Bells.
No,
down in Satsuma.
Satsuma, it's the Gnarly Gar. That's it.
That's in Satsuma?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's down at Seven Sisters is where it is.
Okay. Yes.
Buffalo Bluff.
Yes.
And all that's a Bartram site, believe it or not.
Okay.
And so that's where we launch there at their launch.
I thought about the Gator
to paddle across
to
to paddle across to the lower store, which is at Stokes Landing.
Okay.
And back down Trout Creek.
Yeah.
So Bartram called bass trout. He didn't call them bass. He called them trout. So, which is another point.
Yeah.
That bass statue down here is right out of Bartram's Travels. He describes fly fishing for bass underneath the lily pads. He has a whole section of his book that he describes exactly how to do that. And that's what that statue is depicting, is those bass underneath the lily pads.
That's cool. Yeah, I love all this. Every time I get into these interviews, I come out and I'm like, all right, I'm just never leaving my house, my community. I've got so much to do here. I'm very interested to see how we inspire the youth. I think getting them at Charlie once said something to me. Charlie, for those who don't know, it has a bug bite from the aviation field. So he has been bitten hard. And we worked together to put on the Flying and Classic Car Show that, excuse me, that the city used to do out at the municipal airport. And one of the passions that we had for continuing this when the city had said, you know, we just don't have the ability to do this anymore, was that is where he was inspired for aviation.
Yeah.
And so if I think about that from the aspect of the Bartram Frolic, you know, is that a place where we can inspire our youth to be involved? I mean, the fact of the children from Crescent City having never crossed the bridge, like really does like mind blown. So I would love that while this video, you know, has we have the opportunity to share with the children, you know, here's a way that they're clicking on YouTube, they get it. You know, some people in my age bracket are watching YouTube videos. I hope that this can be a platform for somebody else to get the same inspiration to listen to these stories and be like, wow, that's amazing. I'd love to go do that, you know? So
you know, it really changed me from the standpoint of, you know, I'd been to Murphy Island squirrel hunting, you know, as a young boy by myself and everything, and so it was, you know, it was a place to go squirrel hunting for me, you know, and to run away from the hogs and, you know, chase ticks and all that kind of good stuff. I mean, that's how I knew Murphy Island. But when I read Travels, and I realized that this place has significance, that the Native Americans lived there a long time before Bartram got here.
right.
The Spanish had been there for 200 years before Bartram got here. And then Bartram and his dad show up, and they're describing exactly what Murphy Island looks like. And if you go there today, it still looks that way.
Which is amazing.
Which is really amazing.
Really.
And you can see the Indian midden, remnants of the Indian midden there, and this, that, and the other. And it adds a whole lot of meaning to Murphy Island. Same thing with Dunn's Creek, and same thing with up and down the river, Willaca Spring, Little Lake George, you know, all the way down. Salt Springs was where Bartram memorialized his writing ability that was copied by Kubla Khan, and that was Wadsworth, and then the other author that wrote the 18th century poetry. They used Bartram's words as inspiration, and so when you study that and you think Salt Springs, you have no idea how important this place is from a literary history point of view.
Right.
Not only
Not just
that,
a good time of the weekend.
Not only, but a geological, natural history point of view, but because of his descriptions of all these things and everything.
Right.
Cowpen Lake out in Interlaken, same thing. If you read Bartram's accounts of camping on the banks of Cowpen Lake, and all that he describes there is just absolutely amazing. That's where he describes the soft-shell turtles and the gopher tortoise on his way to Alachua County and all that. And so when you know all of that stuff and you realize that it has been documented, why it was documented, and the inspiration behind it, it really changes your view of things.
Oh, yeah.
It does. And when Bartram was on Mount Royal down there, you know, Palatka has a National Historic Site. Did you know that?
I did not.
Yeah, Mount Royal is a National Historic Site.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so they've got a kiosk and a whole building.
Sounds like Bass Capital Radio podcast is going on a road trip.
You need to, yes, you do, because and by the way, Catherine Braun on our YouTube channel interprets that when she was down here. So, and you know, there again, it's just amazing to see what happened there. And so we have a Quaker friend that goes down there, and every time we have a tour down there, he actually reads Bartram's inspirational prayer for environmental stewardship, and it was quoted in the book from the top of Mount Royal there. And so you read that and you say, well, this is why he did this. He didn't do it to make money, or he wasn't chasing the Indians' horses or after their people or anything like that. You know, he did it because of admiring the creation.
Right.
That was his whole purpose in doing this thing. and he was a Quaker, and that prayer is really inspirational. But getting back to it is that if there's meaning to the travel that you're doing, then that's better than just traveling.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
better than just traveling. So it's really it adds a lot of context to getting out and going and seeing this stuff.
And he's inspiring inspiration in
Right.
people like you, and
Right,
now
right.
people like me through what you're
Right,
sharing.
right. So when we developed the Bartram Trail in Putnam County, that's the way Dean and I felt that we ought to do it. We ought to do it with the idea that it is a recreational asset. And so we created, I think there's 7 hiking trails that we've designated as part of the Bartram Trail in Putnam
Okay.
County. There's, I think there's 10 paddling routes that we've designated as part of the Bartram Trail in Putnam County, and then same thing with the biking. There's about 7 or 8 biking routes that we have documented on our map, um, that you can go and do. So whether you're into biking, hiking, or paddling.
Well, all of us have,
Yeah.
for the most part, all of us have one of those abilities,
Sure.
bar some
Yeah.
extenuating circumstances, whether it's legs, a bike.
Right.
But I have a question that you might be able to answer. So we used to have young outfitters,
Yes.
and we actually, my husband and I had, first of all, had no idea how to kayak.
All right.
And we were their first kayak rentals.
Excellent.
And he put us down at the soft launch,
Yep.
and we did not make it far. We were in the wrong seats, going the wrong way,
Right.
but it was a great time. If you are interested in getting a kayak, but maybe you don't have enough knowledge, or you're just trying to rent one, maybe, where could you do that?
That's a really good question.
Is that
That's
something we need to
something-
work on?
We used to have an organization here in town called Putnam Blueways and Trails.
Mhm.
It's no longer really active at this point in time. And the whole purpose of Putnam Blueways and Trails was the hiking, biking, and paddling. We would have events every single month along those lines. We did full moon paddles every single month.
I remember
Yeah,
that being a
we
thing.
did that, and that was along the time that Young Outfitters was here, and also we had quite a group, and then the Friends of Duns Creek State Park started training people on how to kayak, and I was the kayak instructor, and so we trained about 150 people. What I didn't realize is that I would be training, about out of that 150, about 125 people over 60 years old.
They said, I need something to do.
That's what they started doing and all, and so which is good for
Right.
them and everything. But again, I was kind of surprised that more young people didn't get involved with that. But we were involved with young people training. We just did the kids kayaks and kids cops and kayaks in Crescent
Yes.
City, and we had almost 100 young people there that we taught how to actually paddle a kayak and everything. So. But there's really not a way of doing that, and that's one of the big problems. I remember very distinctly the day that we got notification that we became a national recreation trail. I was eating chicken wings in Gainesville, and I got a notice that I gotten an email, and so I opened it up, and it was an email from a person by the name of Sally Jewell. I don't know Sally Jewell, so I opened the email up. Well, Sally Jewell was the director of was the head of the Department of the Interior for the United States.
Right.
And she was sending me a notice that congratulations, you're now a National Recreation Trail. I'm going, oh my goodness. I didn't expect it to be approved so quickly and so forth. But my immediate thought was, oh my gosh, what if they actually show up?
Right. Exactly.
How are they going to get in the river? How are they going to rent a bicycle? How are they going to all of that. And so, I sat down and wrote about a 3-page manifesto and sent it to everybody I knew in Putnam County. Says, guys, we need to get our ankles taped and our game face on because, people are going to want to come here and do this. And
and what year was that?
That was in 2016. And we still don't. Now, when the outfitters showed up, we were really happy.
Right.
That now we had an ability to do that, but and now we have outfitters that are coming to town, and we're trying to link them up with at the River Center for
Right.
if they wanted to do that. We need your name, and we'll put you in touch with these people, and they'll come and take it from there. So we do have people that are doing that in town as far as
Right.
paddling goes.
Right.
But as far as biking goes, again, if you wanted to bring your family to town and run a bicycle and use our bike trails and stuff like that.
I think this is a great opportunity if you're watching this, and I know that I'm inspired enough to make some phone calls and hopefully help people collaborate, because I mean, I don't have a stock of bikes, but I got a stock of kids who like riding bikes, and you know, to really inspire people to use this resource. So if you're watching this video and you're thinking, man, I'm looking for I'm an entrepreneur and I'm trying to think of something to do, this is a great opportunity, and utilizing Sam as a resource. And you know, maybe we could create some kind of, you know, events that we get out further, because I think Putnam County, truth be told, has a lot of events that people don't recognize.
Right.
And I know that there's an active Blue Way and Trails Facebook page, but you know, kind of a little bit different than maybe originally had been.
Very much different.
But I think that these kind of conversations that we're having right now are necessary for A, preservation of history, B, human connection. I love doing this, but C, to bring inspiration to our community.
Right. And so that's been a concern of mine from day one, actually, you know, is how we're going to put people out on the water and all this and the other. It's we designed this to be you know, with the QR codes and all that, it's interpreted.
Yeah.
And so you can do it virtually
Right
now by going to our website, going site by site. Bartram's actually words describe each of the sites. John Bartram's or William Bartram's words describe all 30 some odd sites that we have. And that's the way that, and you can find out about it. And then to travel it is tough because it's 80 miles of waterways. Well, you're not going to do that in a day. And in bike trails, I mean, you know, one of the bike trails is 100 miles to Gainesville and back.
Right.
And so, you know, that's pretty much a full day. You know,
that's beyond a full day for me.
And then hiking includes the Florida National Scenic Trail out in near Flora Home and everything. The site where the Florida Trail goes over over Rice Creek there on Highway 100. That's a Bartram site. They paddled all the way up Rice Creek to 7 miles, and that's exactly 7 miles there. So it all has a lot of significance, and it's all here. And so the mapping and the interpretation has all been done, but it's a matter of putting people out there. And again, the thing that is kind of disturbing from Putnam County's point of view is as we do these recreational events and everything, you know, we have people coming to town, but they're not our people. They're just not.
Right.
And that's kind of sad for me.
No, I get that. It's other people appreciate it so much that they're traveling here.
That's right.
But our own residents aren't.
Right.
You know, I hope, and I'm going to go with this hope. And I want to continue to have these conversations. And you bet your bottom dollar I'll be out there with the next Bartram Frolic to record that. But I hope that these videos can inspire people who maybe haven't paid attention to it. And I don't know what the answer is, and I don't know how to get people excited about it, but I believe that if we work together with that and learn how to incorporate pieces of things that are exciting, that we could do that.
Well, you know, and again, in the real big picture, my concern is, you know, are people being taught the value of nature? Are people being taught, you know, what we've already done to this place, and is there anything we can do to preserve it, and so forth? I mean, the St. Johns River is nothing like it was when I got here, and all, and it's and I don't know of many people that are involved in preserving it, and that's a concern of mine, because my grandchildren are going to show up here on June the 30th with their kayaks and with their paddle boards, and we're going to get out there on it and have the good time that we used to have and all. It's, you know, when we were when I was growing up and in high school and so forth, that river was our recreation. It really
Right.
was, and we spent time skiing on it. We would go to the beach and surf in the morning, come back to my place, do water skiing, and then go to the school dance on Saturday night. That was our weekend.
Right.
And church on Sunday because the
Right.
parents made us go.
Right.
So,
Obligations.
that's right. That's right. And that's how we grew up. And I've got a picture of Taylor Douglas skiing past my dock in San Mateo, and you can see his ribs.
That's
so skinny.
That's the Bartram booger enigma that you've got going on over here in my book. That's the same thing. That's so funny.
Really
I want to see this picture, just so you know.
That's right.
But this is the second time we've talked about elusive pictures of Mr. Taylor Douglas. Right, and if you don't have the chance to know Mr. Taylor Douglas, little does he know he's going to be coming to hang out with me. We've talked about it, but his time. So, well, I have to tell you, Sam. I always try to sit in our conversations. The interviews is a way to call, the format of what we're doing, but really I'm just having dialogue, and I love doing this. And I try to sit down and before anybody I'm speaking to, envision what it is that you're talking about. And my imagination has just run wild with me today. And did, when I would talk to Ken and Janice, who brought up, Bartram Frolic, and she talked about the archives and things that she'd went to. But I just want to say thank you for the work that you've done. Thank you for the dedication, going from retirement right into a full-time job. And thank you for continuing to put effort in that. And I hope that we can now, as the next generation, take up the torch and carry on and further the efforts that you're doing. So, but you spending time here inspired me and hopefully inspired our viewers. And so if you have any questions about anything that we talked about, we're going to leave links below. Be sure to get engaged. You could always reach out. I know you guys have Facebook, you have email. They've got a great YouTube. We'll be sure to link that as well. But until we have the opportunity to sit down at the next Bartram event where I'm going to be bringing my camera and enjoying, I hope you have an amazing day. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for the time.
Absolutely. See you guys in the next episode.
All right.